too much time has passed. You've missed weddings, funerals, harvests, wars. The world kept spinning without you, and you, weathered and burnt by the journey, returned to find yourself a stranger in your own town. The money doesn't last long. Wages are cut for damages or lost cargo, or you were cheated at the docks. Your coin vanished before you even reached the tavern. You spend the days walking or drinking or both. You find other sailors, men who understand what it means to work the decks until your fingers bleed, to feel joy at dry biscuits, to hear the call of the watch at 4 a.m. as a kind of comfort. You sit together, you don't say much. You don't have to. Eventually you start to wonder, will you go back to the sea? To the same winds and waves and endless gray? The answer is almost always yes. Not because you love it, but because the land no longer fits. Hey guys, tonight we're talking about what it really meant to be a sailor in the age of exploration. Not the kind with maps and telescopes, but the kind with cracked hands, rotting rations, and weeks without landfall. Before you settle in, take a second to like the video and subscribe. Quiet, detailed journeys through history that won't keep you up at night. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far this little sleepy ship sails. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft oceanic hum, and let's drift into a different kind of voyage together. Congratulations. You've just signed onto a ship bound for nowhere fast, and you'll regret it by morning. You wake to the creak of wood and the slap of waves. It's not a gentle sound. It's rhythmic, sure, but with an edge that grinds into your nerves. The floor beneath you moves, a slow shifting pitch that's never quite the same twice. Your hammock sways. It smells like the sweat of the man who slept in it before you. You climb out, bare feet hitting the damp planks of the lower deck. It's still dark. It's always dark down here. Oil lamps hang from iron hooks, flickering yellow light that dances across water-stained beams and sagging ropes. Your back already aches. There's a knot just below your shoulder blade where you curled wrong in your sleep. There's no privacy. No soft place, just bodies, hammocks, crates, and the ever-present roll of the sea. You grab your shirt, still damp. You don't remember the last time your clothes were dry all the way through. You haul yourself up the ladder to the main deck. The salt air slaps your face, it's cold. The wind bites at your skin, carries the sharp scent of rotting fish and wet canvas. And something else, something sweet and awful. The stink of a rat's nest somewhere below deck. When someone barks an order, you don't look to see who, you just move. Because on this ship, hesitation gets you whipped. The sails are stiff with salt. You and two others haul on a line thick with tar and old seafoam. The rope bites into your palms, you wince. There's already a blister from yesterday, but you don't mention it. You just pull. And breakfast is a chunk of hardtack. Biscuit so dry it cracks your molars. There's weevils inside, but you flick them out with a fingernail and eat it anyway. You chew, swallow, wash it down with stale water that tastes like the barrel it came from. You're lucky. The last ship ran out completely. They drank seawater by mistake, 3 died. But the day continues in cycles. Rope work, sail repair, scrubbing the deck with sand and seawater, hauling barrels from one hold to another, repeating orders back to the first mate, staring at the endless gray-blue sea, no land in sight. There hasn't been land in over a month. You patch a sail that tore in the night storm. The canvas is slick with brine. You crouch in the wind, needle in hand, threading heavy cord through fabric that stinks of gull droppings and mildew. Your fingers are numb, but you keep sewing. Once at night, you sleep again in your hammock. Above you, the stars blur slightly, your eyes too tired to focus. You hear the groan of timbers, the mutter of a man dreaming in Portuguese, the scurry of rats across a barrel. Somewhere a man coughs and deep and rattling. You roll over, pray he doesn't have scurvy, and hope you'll see land before your gums start bleeding. Segment 2, The Voyage That Wasn't. Magellan, the Mutiny, and the Men He Left Behind. You have likely heard of Ferdinand Magellan, the man credited with leading the first voyage to circumnavigate the globe. A Portuguese explorer sailing under the Spanish flag, a man of ambition, maps, and celestial instruments. But this isn't his story. This is the story of the men beneath him, the ones who scrubbed the deck while he studied the stars, the ones who stood in the rain while he read from royal scrolls, the ones who followed him past the edge of known maps, and were never seen again. The year was 1519. 5 ships departed from Seville, creaking with supplies, crew, and imperial expectations. Trinidad, San Antonio, Concepcion, Victoria, Santiago. Names spoken like prayers before storms. The men aboard weren't heroes, they were mostly poor. Pressed into service or lured by coin, they came from every corner of Spain and beyond. Castilian farmers, Portuguese fishermen, Greek gunners, English interpreters. Some were barely more than boys. The ships smelled of pitch and sawdust and old sweat before they even left port. Bunks were cramped, food was already spoiling. But still they left, chasing a western passage to the Spice Islands. Weeks turned into months. Supplies dwindled, sickness bloomed, meat went green, hardtack turned black with mold. The water turned thick with slime. They reached South America, hugged the coast down past Rio de la Plata, searching for a strait that might not exist. Winter came early, harsh winds. Frozen ropes, fingers split open in the cold. And there, at the edge of the world, came mutiny. The men aboard San Antonio and Concepcion were cold, starving, and bitter. They hated Magellan's secrecy, his arrogance, his insistence on pressing south. They rose up, tried to take control. But Magellan was faster. Smarter, he struck first. His loyal men boarded the rebel ships by night. There was no grand battle, just shouting, and then silence. Magellan executed the leaders, marooned others. One he ordered to be dragged to death behind a boat. Feet tied, body broken by the waves. The fleet sailed on, but not together. San Antonio, the strongest ship, disappeared. Its captain turned it around in secret and fled back to Spain. He brought news of mutiny and failure. He said Magellan was dead. He was not. Not yet. The rest of the fleet found the strait that now bears Magellan's name. They passed through narrow channels flanked by cold cliffs. Some prayed, others wept. They didn't know what lay on the other side, only that going back meant death or dishonor. Then the Pacific, so named for its deceptive stillness. For 3 months they sailed without seeing land. No islands, no birds, no relief. The food was gone. Men chewed leather, ate sawdust, drank rat broth. Scurvy took hold. Gums bleeding, teeth falling out, legs swelling like barrels. Out of 237 men who left Spain, only 18 returned, and Magellan was not among them. And he was killed in the Philippines, stabbed by islanders during a skirmish he underestimated. He never completed the voyage, never saw Spain again, never tasted the glory he was promised. But still his name remains. The names of his crew? The sailors who froze and starved, who mutinied and bled, who vanished into waves or were left behind on foreign shores. They are buried in silence. Their bones scattered across forgotten beaches, sunken reefs, and the quiet ocean floor. Segment 3, Maps of Dread, Sea Monsters, Ghost Ships, and the Fear of the Unknown. You're lying on the night watch. The stars shimmer like pinholes through a great black sail. The ocean stretches in every direction, flat, endless, and indifferent. Your eyes are heavy, your muscles sore, but sleep is not allowed. Not yet. There are stories passed from sailor to sailor like scraps of smuggled bread. Stories about what's out there, beyond the edge of vision, beyond the reach of compass or map. You've heard them in whispers. You've heard them from men who were never quite right after long voyages. You've heard them from men who disappeared the next day. There is the story of the Flying Dutchman, a ghost ship doomed to sail forever, a punishment for a cursed captain who defied God and the sea. They say the ship glows faintly green in the distance, and that to see it is to invite death. Some say it hovers just above the water. Others say it never touches port, no matter how long it sails. You've never seen it yourself, but one man, old Esteban, swore he did near the Cape of Good Hope. He hasn't spoken much since. And then there are the monsters. Not the kind from books. These are the ones sketched in the margins of old charts, drawn by men who saw something and could not forget it. The Kraken with arms wide enough to drag a full-rigged ship below the waves. Tentacles thick as tree trunks, eyes like lanterns rising from the black to strike without warning. Or the Leviathan, the whale so massive its back looks like an island. Sailors land upon it, light fires, only to be dragged under when it wakes. Others speak of serpents, coiling, endless, with jaws that crack hulls in two. There are sightings recorded in logs, some serious, some scribbled. Were they real? Or just the brain's way of explaining waves that didn't behave, shadows that moved, noises that echoed with no clear cause. Maps from the 15th and 16th centuries show these beings. In the waters off Greenland, they draw sea wolves. In the Indian Ocean, horned turtles and giant fish with snarling mouths. In the cold southern oceans, icebergs that resemble dragons with crests and tails and open jaws. Cartographers sometimes wrote, "Here be monsters." But more often they left it blank. An empty space, the unknown. And that blankness was worse. and the sea plays tricks on tired eyes. You see shapes in the waves, lights on the horizon, figures clinging to bits of driftwood waving, only to vanish as you draw closer. Once a man swore he saw an island where none was. He could describe it perfectly. Its trees, its shoreline, the birds in the air. He wrote it in the log. They called it St. Brendan's Island. It never appeared again. Not to him. Not to anyone. Fear takes different forms at sea. Sometimes it's a sudden silence after hours of wind. Sometimes it's the creak of the hull in dead water, or the strange rhythmic tapping against the side of the ship that no one can explain. And sometimes, when you're out there long enough, it's your own mind you fear most. You begin to wonder if the monsters were ever real at all, or if it was simply the ocean, stretching so far and so long that it began to whisper back. Segment 4, the Captain's Table, Privilege and Power at Sea. You've never stepped foot in the captain's quarters. You've glimpsed them once, briefly, through a half-open door during a change of shift. But you've heard the stories, every sailor has. You imagine the scent first, not fish or rope or sweat, but beeswax maybe, old leather paper, ink and oil. The captain's quarters are toward the stern, elevated above the main deck. They are, compared to the rest of the ship, another world entirely. And the windows, actual windows, look out toward the ship's wake where foam curls and stretches into the horizon. The glass rattles softly in the wind. By the windows sits a table, wide, polished, cluttered with maps, dividers, measuring tools, and a gently swinging brass compass. The captain studies these maps in silence, drawing pencil lines while the ship sways gently beneath his boots. There are charts of winds and stars, islands half known, coastlines still believed to curve where they do not. Here, knowledge is power. Navigation is control. The captain is not always alone. He dines with his officers. The first mate, the pilot, perhaps the ship's chaplain if there is one. They sit at the captain's table for supper. A ceremony of order, of etiquette, of superiority over the swaying chaos outside their walls. And their meals are different. Where you gnaw on hardtack and salt pork, they eat preserved fruits, cheese, smoked meat kept aside in sealed crates. Wine is rationed, yes, but they receive it in metal goblets, not old tin cups that rust around the rim. Plates clink, knives scrape gently on wooden trenchers. The conversation is measured. Quiet topics include weather, navigation, reports of morale. Rarely do they speak of the men on deck. Rarely do they speak of home. There is distance here, a kind of ritual separation between them and the rest of the ship. On the captain's bed is small but private. The mattress is stuffed with something softer than hay. Wool blankets. A small wooden chest at the foot of the bed holds letters. A folded uniform, perhaps a rosary or keepsake. A lock of hair. A child's toy, or a ribbon from a wife long left behind. Still, the captain is not always at ease. He bears the burden of the voyage. He is responsible for every soul on board. Every decision is his, and mistakes are counted in lives. In stormy seas, he climbs to the quarterdeck, shouting orders above the wind while men below slip on the ropes. If the food spoils, it is he who must ration it. If scurvy breaks out, he must write it in the log. Mutinies begin with whispers. He hears them in passing. A glance held too long, a pause before saluting. So while he sleeps apart from the men, he does not always sleep well. There is power in the officer's rank. Real, tangible power. The privilege of dry clothes, of writing tools, of choosing when to speak and when to punish. But there is also isolation. A kind that's sharper at sea, where every voice carries and every choice echoes against the waves. You may envy the captain, but the captain does not forget that the sea has taken better men than him, and that the ship, no matter how large or finely built, is still just wood, rope, and hope floating on an ocean that does not care. Segment 5. The Sick Bay, Illness Below, and the Silence that followed. It starts with a cough. Not loud, not alarming, just dry and small, buried under the sound of creaking planks and shifting crates. A man clears his throat, no one looks up. The air below deck is thicker than above, heavier. It smells of brine, mildew, old grease, and the slow decay of flesh that hasn't seen sunlight in weeks. Ventilation is poor. The portholes, if they exist, are too small to matter. Lamps burn dimly. Their smoke only adds to the haze. You sleep pressed shoulder to shoulder with other men, stacked in hammocks like sardines in a rocking wooden barrel. One cough becomes two, then three, then a cluster of men wheezing in the dark, their breath wet, rattling like wind through reeds. The surgeon is called. He is not a surgeon in the modern sense, not a doctor, but a carpenter with blades. He carries a worn leather bag. He smells of sweat and wine and bandages reused too many times. There are no antiseptics, no gloves. Only rags, saws, and faith. Odone, he checks the sick. Looks at tongues, presses on bellies. Feels the heat radiating from fevered skin. He frowns, he mutters. For those with scurvy, the signs are clearer. Swollen gums. Teeth loosen in soft, purplish mouths. The smell is unmistakable. A kind of rot from within. The surgeon prescribes vinegar if there's any left. Or lemon peel soaked in stale wine if you're lucky. But mostly he just shakes his head. You'll have to ride it out, he says. And then he moves on. Said sometimes the sick are tied into their hammocks. Not out of cruelty, but because they roll too much when delirious. They sweat through their clothes. They cry out in languages no one else speaks. Others are carried above deck, eyes squinting against the light to get air that will do little good. When a man dies, he is wrapped in his own blanket and sewn shut inside it. The last stitch is made through the nose, an old ritual to ensure the soul knows it has passed. Then he is carried to the edge. Words are spoken or not. Sometimes there are none, and he is dropped. Like the sea swallows him whole as it has swallowed many before. The men say nothing. They return to work. The ropes still need pulling. The sails still need mending. Death is part of the rhythm. Ita, but the worst sickness is the one that hides. The fever that waits. The swelling that begins quietly in the gums. The sense that your bones are softening. The way your legs ache at night and won't support you in the morning. Some men don't speak of it. They tie bandages around their calves, lean harder on railings, chew slowly so their teeth don't fall out in the meal. They try to wait for land, wait for lemons, wait for mercy. But the sea offers none of these. And then there are the men who recover. Thin, shaking, scarred, they return to duty, but with a slowness in their movements, a dullness in their eyes, a wariness in how they step, as if the deck might open beneath them at any moment. In truth, it might. Segment 6. The Whisper of Omens, Superstition and the Quiet Rules of the Sea. You might not call yourself a superstitious man, but after 6 weeks at sea, when the world is only wood and water, you begin to notice things. A bird flying the wrong way, a sudden silence just before dawn, a coil of rope unraveling with no one near it. You don't speak of these things aloud. You just glance briefly, then look away, and you hope no one else saw, because if they did, they'll want to know what you plan to do about it. Quadrar. Among sailors, rules aren't only written in the captain's log. There are other codes, unspoken, old, and fragile. Whistling on deck is discouraged. Not because it's annoying, though it is, but because it's said to call the wind. Not the good kind, not the steady trade winds that fill your sails, but the angry ones, the kind that howl and tear and do not stop. Dropping a hat overboard is considered a curse. A drowned hat is a drowned man. It's said the sea will come for the head that wore it. And women? Well, women are not to be spoken of at sea, not loudly. Some say their presence brings storms. Others say it's their absence that does. There are rituals too, old odd ones. Before a ship departs, the hull might be tapped 3 times by the bosun. Not for soundness, for luck. A coin is sometimes placed beneath the mast before it's stepped. An offering or perhaps a bribe. Names are scratched in secret places, on beams, in drawers, beneath hammocks. To keep one's soul from drifting. To say I was here, I belong to something. Our birds are watched closely. Albatrosses are sacred. They follow ships for miles, gliding just above the waves. Wings stretched impossibly wide. If one dies, if one is killed, men speak of it in hushed tones. They remember the stories, how the winds turned against the ship, how men vanished in the night. And if the birds vanish entirely, that's worse. That means something is coming. A storm, a death, something you cannot name. Dreams become meaningful too. You might wake in the dark and remember your mother's voice, or the smell of rain on dry earth. Some take that as a sign. Others keep the dream to themselves, afraid it might be a farewell. And then there are the strange coincidences. A broken lantern on the same night the anchor chain snaps. A name called in the dark, no voice attached to it. You begin to wonder what's real and what your mind has invented to fill the space where the world used to be. But you do not question the rules. You touch the wood 3 times when you speak of death. You avoid the port side at night if a crow has landed on the rail that morning. You never ever count your rations aloud. You listen when the old sailors mutter warnings, even if you do not understand them. Because on the sea, the line between belief and survival is thin, and sometimes a little ritual is the only thing that keeps you from falling over it. Segment 7. Landfall. The dread of the unknown shore. The cry of land ho cuts through the morning haze like a bell. Your legs ache with the memory of standing. Your arms slacken at the oar, and for a moment your breath catches. You thought you would feel joy, relief, but the land does not welcome you. It looms, green, sharp, uneven, rising up from the sea like the spine of some great sleeping beast. Mist curls along its edges. The shoreline is unfamiliar, too quiet. No fishing boats, no smoke, just dense vegetation and the echo of distant bird song. You grip the railing tighter. Behind as the ship anchors offshore, the crew grows silent. No one knows what to expect. The chart showed nothing here. No name, no warnings. No harbors or flags or known kings. Only space and questions. You are sent ashore in a smaller boat. 6 men with oars, 1 with a musket, and the ship's interpreter who knows 4 tongues, but none of the ones spoken here. The boat scrapes against coarse sand. You step out, and your boots, unused to anything but planks and salt, sink slightly into the earth. It feels too soft, too alive. Birds scatter from the trees. Something, maybe a monkey, maybe a child, moves quickly just beyond the tree line. You hear shouting, or maybe singing. It's hard to tell. You are watched. You do not see them, but you feel their presence. Eyes in the underbrush, curious or cautious or cold. You carry trinkets, mirrors, glass beads, knives, lengths of cloth dyed in bright colors. The captain says to offer them as gifts. The priest, if there is one, offers a different gift, a small wooden cross and a thin, uneasy smile. Beyond, if they come forward, they do so slowly. Painted faces, long spears, clothes made of woven grass or leather or none at all. They do not blink. The first hour is spent in silence, gesturing, holding things out, pointing, smiling too hard. Then comes food or not. Then comes fire or not. Then comes a misstep. A raised voice, a startled movement, an unfortunate word spoken by the wrong man at the wrong time. The air tightens. Not every landfall ends in violence, but many do. Some begin with peace and end with blood. Some begin with fear and end in fever. Sometimes you leave the shore with more than you brought. Coconuts, cloth, spices, gold dust in a pouch. Sometimes you leave it with less. A man missing, a musket gone, a gash on someone's arm that will fester in the coming days. The sea has its own cruelty, but the land plays by different rules. It doesn't rock beneath your feet, but it hides other dangers. Poisoned water, unseen insects, plants that burn your skin when touched, languages that you do not know how to fear until it's too late. And when you return to the ship, you are quiet. You do not talk about what you saw, or who you left behind, or how for a brief moment the sound of birds and distant drums made your heart ache in a way you couldn't explain. You do not feel rested. You feel like a trespasser, and the next time you hear land ho, you will not cheer. You will just look to the misty shore and wonder who or what might be watching. Segment 8. The Bellkeeper. Time, watches, and the toll of endless days. There is no sunrise on the open sea, only the slow lifting of the dark, as if the world is unsure whether to wake you at all. The air turns a shade lighter. The sails start to show their seams. The sea remains the same, flat, endless, always moving and never arriving. You wait for it, and then it comes, the bell. One solemn strike, low, hollow, measured. It is the sound of time. The bell does not chime the hour as it would in a town square. It is struck in watches, each 4 hours long with 8 half-hour intervals. 1 bell, then 2, then 3, all the way to 8, and then it begins again. Day and night lose meaning. There is only the next watch, and the next. To you, it is just a sound, but to the man who rings it, it is a duty. One of the loneliest on the ship. Alvoy, he is the bellkeeper, a quiet man, often unnoticed, but always present. He keeps the ship's time. Not with a watch, few have them, but with a sandglass. A long, narrow vial turned over every 30 minutes, watched carefully, observed like a heartbeat. If he forgets, if he misses a turn, the rhythm of the ship breaks, and the captain notices. He is also the man who marks the days passing, not just in time, but in loss. It is the bellkeeper who tolls for the dead. One long, slow ring, then silence. The men stop eating, they remove their caps. They do not speak, no names are given aloud. But they all know, and then a second ring. For the ship to move forward again. The bellkeeper is trusted but rarely liked. He carries a strange authority. He reminds you hourly that another piece of your life has slipped away. He knows who is late for watch. He knows who does not rise from their hammock. He keeps his notes in a small, battered log, times, rotations, illnesses, disappearances. Some say he writes too much. Others say he writes only what he's told to see. Either way, the ship's rhythm depends on him. When stormy weather, when the bell clatters wildly, he ties it with rope and stands near it with a hand on the clapper, ready to strike only when needed. Even as the rain lashes and the ship reels, in calm seas he becomes something else. A metronome, a presence. His bell marks your hunger, your rest, your duty, your dread. You learn to anticipate the sound, to know where you are in the watch by the feel in your gut. 2 bells, time to eat. 6 bells, nearly over. 8 bells, freedom or sleep or something worse. The bellkeeper does not command the crew. He does not sail the ship. He does not hold a weapon. But in the silence between his strikes, you feel the weight of the hours and the slow drip of time passing in a place where days no longer belong to you. And when you hear the bell again, you're never quite sure if it's telling you something began or something ended. Segment 9. Ports and Profits. The murky business of trade at sea. When you finally dock, after weeks of nothing but sea and sky, the first thing that hits you is the noise. Voices. Hundreds of them in dozens of languages, shouting prices, instructions, warnings, threats. You smell it next. Not salt, but sweat and spice, cinnamon perhaps, clove. Charcoal smoke and fruit overripe in the sun. The docks of a port city, whether in West Africa, the Indies, or the southern edge of the New World, are not quiet places. They hum, they jostle, they breathe, and you are not at the center of it. You're just a sailor, one among many. You carry crates and barrels. You lift, load, and unload. Rope burns, stinging under the tropical sun. But even from your place in the chain of cargo, you see what this really is. A market, a machine. A meeting point for people who would never otherwise stand shoulder to shoulder. Your ship doesn't just carry men. It carries things, textiles dyed with crushed beetles, iron nails, musket balls, rough wool, shiny beads, polished glass. Things of little value at home, but here, these are the keys to kingdoms. In return you receive sugar, pepper, nutmeg, indigo, slabs of ebony, sacks of grain, maybe even gold. Sometimes you trade for people. You do not ask where they came from. You do not ask where they're going. You just move the crate, nod at the officer, and go back below deck. The deals are made in shadowed rooms, between captains and governors, merchants and middlemen. Ledgers are written in fine slanted ink. Cargo is weighed, disputes are resolved with coin or cannon, and somewhere in the back room, a priest blesses the voyage home as if a prayer can make profit clean. Outside the trade hall, the sailors wait. Some spend their coin quickly, on drink, on dice, on women who whisper in your ear in a language you do not understand. Some are robbed, some vanish, some never make it back to the ship. And still no one stops the trade, the port keeps breathing. Furthermore, you learn to distrust the smiles of merchants. You learn that goods can be stolen long before they are loaded. You learn that not all trades involve money. Sometimes what's exchanged is information. A map, a tip about another ship's route. The rumor of a rebellion or a silver vein upstream, news from Europe months old and half true. These things too have weight. Why, by the time you leave port, your ship feels different, heavier. Not just with goods, but with the invisible weight of deals struck, of fate sealed, of debts not yet paid. You pull at the lines. You haul up the anchor. And as the sails catch the wind again, you watch the harbor shrink behind you, a place of noise, spice, shadow, and choices no one speaks of once you're at sea. Segment 10. The Sea Shepherd. The priest aboard a ship that feared God and storms alike. He doesn't arrive with ceremony. No bell is rung for him, no trumpet sounds. He boards with the others, carrying nothing but a battered case, a small black book, and a wooden crucifix that has seen too many voyages. He is the ship's priest or chaplain or simply father, if the men feel like using the word. Most don't. He's not an officer, not a sailor, not part of the crew's daily chain of orders and curses, but he exists in the quiet moments, in the spaces between work, between storms, between breaths. He sees his cabin is a box tucked between the gunpowder hold and the carpenter's shed. He's allowed a shelf for his book of hours, a candlestick that drips thick wax onto the boards, and a hammock that creaks when he rolls to one side in his sleep. He wakes early, washes his hands in a tin basin with salt water, and begins his murmured prayers. Latin syllables flowing gently into the dark belly of the ship, where few listen, but none object. The men keep their distance. But they notice him, they always notice. Like once a week he holds mass, if the sea is kind. He lays out a cloth on a crate, balances the host atop a chipped wooden plate, and uses wine that tastes faintly of vinegar. The crew gathers more out of curiosity than devotion. Some smirk, some yawn, but most just listen. Because when you've been 3 weeks at sea with no land in sight, even a reluctant sermon becomes a small tether to something that feels like home. His homilies are short. He knows better than to preach too long. He speaks not of grandeur, but of endurance, of storms weathered, of patience, of grace. He tells them God does not forget the forgotten, that salt on the skin is no barrier to the soul, that a prayer whispered into wind is still heard, and then it ends, a cross is drawn in the air. A few men mimic it, others spit to the side and walk away, but they come back the next time. Then he performs other duties too. He's the keeper of the dead. When a man dies, from fever, from falling, from a blade in the dark, it's the chaplain who prepares the words. He writes the name in his book, draws a shaky cross beside it, and stands at the rail as the canvas-wrapped body is tipped into the sea. He says the rites quietly. He crosses himself, and the bell-keeper, standing to the side, rings the bell once, a long, mournful note that drifts across the waves. Then the crew goes back to work, because death doesn't stop the wind. Men come to him in secret. Late at night, when the deck is quiet, they approach him in half-light. They confess things, not always sins. Sometimes fears, voices they heard in the wind, a dream they can't forget, a face they saw in the waves. He listens. He does not judge. He lays a hand on a shoulder and says little, just enough to make the silence feel less sharp. He's not always welcome. If the voyage turns rough, if food spoils, if men vanish, if winds stop for days, the crew begins to glance his way. They whisper that his prayers are weak, that he's unlucky, that maybe this voyage should have sailed without a priest. And still he remains unmoving, steady, his small flame never quite going out. He is neither comfort nor command. He is something else, a man whose presence reminds the others that their souls are still tethered to something larger, even if they've forgotten how to name it. He carries the weight of belief in a place that devours it, and when lightning forks across the sky and the ship creaks as if it might split in two, he's the one kneeling near the mast, head bowed, whispering not for himself, but for all the men who cannot remember the last time they prayed. Segment 11. Hands on the wind. The sailors who climbed into the sky. You are woken not by a voice, but by the grind of the pulley, the bark of command from the quarterdeck, and the sudden tilt of the world beneath your feet. A gust has shifted. The captain's voice cuts across the deck, and every man knows it's time to move the sails. You rise before your bones are ready, your fingers still stiff from sleep, and the sky, already gray with morning, stretches above you, filled with flapping canvas like the wings of some great creature straining to be free. You do not question the order. You run. The rigging is a forest of rope and line, wet with dew and salt, coated in tar where the knots have been rubbed smooth by decades of calloused hands. You grab hold, your fingers already burning from yesterday's climb, and begin the ascent. It isn't like climbing a ladder. There are no rails, no safety, the ship sways. The wind pulls at your sleeves. And below you, the deck moves with the sea, a shifting target that has swallowed many before you. You climb anyway. Up in the tops, you become a different creature, half shadow, half rhythm. You balance with your knees against the yards, your chest against the spar, your hands gripping sailcloth as thick and stiff as old leather. The sails are heavy. Even a small one, soaked with sea air, can take the strength of 3 men to haul in. You work quickly, the wind biting your ears, your knuckles scraped raw, your voice hoarse from shouting lines to the men below. One mistake, a foot on the wrong knot, a slip of the wrist, and you fall. Some scream, some don't. The sea is indifferent either way. You tie off the clew line. You brace the spar. You haul in the slack and reef the canvas. Your muscles strain until your arms feel hollow. And still, there's more to do. The sails are not just cloth. They are the ship's lungs. When trimmed poorly, the whole voyage suffers. When trimmed perfectly, she moves like a beast unchained. The officers may carry compasses and speak of stars, but without the riggers, nothing moves. Below deck, the new boys sit up in their hammocks, listening to the pounding of boots above them. They dread the day they'll be called up. Everyone remembers their first climb. The taste of iron in the mouth. The rope that left grooves in the hands. The cruel encouragement from older sailors. Don't look down. Don't let go. Don't scream, it doesn't help. And the quiet ceremony when they return to the deck. Not as boys, but as men who have met the sky and lived. And there is no rest afterward. You coil lines, you check the halyards. You scrape resin from your palms. And when the next gust changes the wind again, you climb again. It is a job with no end. No thanks, no protection. Only the knowledge that the ship depends on it. And the feeling deep in your bones that if you do not hold the wind will hold you. Segment 12. The boil and the biscuit. Eating on the edge of starvation. You follow your nose, though you quickly regret it. The smell of the galley is not inviting. It's thick, a soup of burned fat, spoiled meat, wood smoke, and something sour. You can never quite tell if it's coming from the stew pot or the cook himself. Meals are served twice a day, but hunger is constant. It wraps around your gut like a coil of rope. You wake up hungry, you work hungry. You sleep hungry. And when the food comes, you eat it fast before you can think too much about what it is. Mark Ryan, the cook, is called Cookie, though no one says it kindly. He's a veteran of many ships and many burns. His hands are blackened at the fingertips. His apron is stiff with old grease. He works in a space not much larger than a coffin, using a stove chained to the deck, so it doesn't slide and set the whole ship on fire. He's not a chef, he's a survivor, and he feeds other survivors. Today's meal is always the same as yesterday's. A salted meat stew where the meat might be pork, or beef, or horse, no one asks. The meat has spent weeks soaking in barrels of brine. It's hard gray, strings between your teeth. You chew out of duty, not desire, alongside it hardtack. A biscuit baked until it could break your tooth. You knock it on the table before eating, not to soften it, but to check for weevils, tiny beetles that live inside the flour, and sometimes survive the baking process. If it moves, you flick it off. If it doesn't, you eat it. There is no fresh fruit, no fresh anything. Water is rationed, and what's left often smells of the barrel. Wood, mold, vinegar. To stretch the stores, the cook sometimes adds pea mash or dried beans, but those come with their own side effects: gas, stomach cramp, and communal regret downwind. Sugar is a rare treasure, given only for illness or mutiny prevention. You might trade a shirt for a spoonful, but if you're lucky, the cook has spices. A pinch of pepper, maybe, or the dried scrapings from the bottom of a mustard cask. They don't add much flavor, just the memory of it. On special days, landfall, fair weather, the captain's good mood, you might get a boiled pudding. Flour, lard, raisins, salt, tied in cloth and dunked in the same pot that's used for stew. It tastes like wet canvas, but the men cheer anyway. The rats in the hold are bold. They know when the cook is distracted. They climb the rigging, chew through sacks, even run across your boots while you eat. Some sailors trap them, some eat them. They say rat tastes like chicken, they lie. Food on a ship is not about enjoyment. It's about fuel, keeping your legs under you in the wind, keeping your hands steady on the rope, keeping your thoughts just sharp enough to not fall overboard. You eat not because you want to, but because you must. And then you lick your spoon, place it back in your pouch, and hope it won't be your turn to swab the galley tomorrow, because the smell lingers even after the meal is gone. Segment 13. The boom below. Life in the gun deck's shadow. Down here the air is still, but thick. The smell never leaves. It clings to the beams, the ropes, your skin. It's a mix of old powder, scorched wood, grease, and damp wool. There's no light save for oil lamps, and even those flicker nervously, because down here a single spark is enough to end everyone's story. You are in the gun deck, the silent beast of the ship where cannons sit like sleeping giants. You work as a gunner's mate, though the title feels generous. You clean, you haul shot, you measure powder, and when battle comes, or worse, a surprise encounter, you work faster than fear. Each cannon is a system, an order, a ritual. You begin by sponging, a long, wet swab thrust into the barrel to extinguish any lingering embers from the last shot. Skip this step, and the next powder charge could ignite too early, blowing your hands or worse, your entire crew across the deck. Then comes the charge. A linen bag filled with carefully weighed black powder, shoved down the throat of the cannon with the ramrod, followed by a wad of cloth, then the iron ball itself. Each one weighs nearly as much as a man's head, and they are made for breaking things: decks, ribs, ships, sometimes skulls. You stand to the side when priming the vent, dripping a few grains of fine powder into the ignition hole, then twisting the linstock, a slow-burning match cord, and bracing for the command. Fire! The cannon lurches backward with a roar that deafens even if you've stuffed cotton in your ears. The recoil can crush a man who isn't clear in time. Smoke fills the gun deck like a fog from hell. Your throat stings, your eyes water. The air is no longer air, it's fire and grit. And while others above may shout, you load the next round, because the enemy won't wait. Even in times of peace, the gunner's deck remains a place of tension. You drill constantly Polish brass fittings, oil the wheels, patch the worm-eaten walls. The powder is kept in the magazine, a separate locked chamber buried even deeper. Only a few are trusted with access. It's lined with copper. Even nails must be made of brass to avoid a single fatal spark. Inside are barrels upon barrels of fine black powder, stored in silence, guarded by fear. Why, there are stories of ships that vanished in a single flash, not from battle, but from carelessness. A dropped lantern, a loose nail, a forgotten ember in a used cannon. So every motion is methodical, every footstep cautious. Even laughter feels dangerous down here. And the gunner himself, usually an older man with a limp, a squint, and a 1,000-yard stare, keeps record books like a priest. He knows the name and mood of every cannon. He speaks to them sometimes, calls them old girl, sweet iron, or you lying devil, depending on how they behave. Oh, there is pride in the work. These aren't just weapons. They're machines of precision. They give the ship teeth. And when the broadside is fired in unison, you feel it not just in your ears, but in your chest, your teeth, your knees. A rolling drumbeat of doom, and then silence and smoke, and splinters. When it's over, you swab, reload, and wait. Because the next thunderclap is always coming, and the sea doesn't forgive those who aren't ready. Segment 14. When the wind dies, drifting into madness in the doldrums, the sails hang limp, heavy, unmoving like wet laundry left too long to dry. The ocean around the ship is glass flat, stretching out in all directions, not a ripple, not a breeze, not a hint of movement. There's no sound but the groan of timber and the creak of ropes. Even the gulls are gone. The wind has vanished. At first, no one speaks of it. The captain scans the horizon more often, orders the sails adjusted as if the air might suddenly remember how to blow. The first mate mutters to the bosun, quiet curses about bad luck, wrong headings, stubborn weather. But after a day or two, when even the flags hang dead, when the ship stops moving entirely, the mood shifts. You begin to feel the weight of stillness. The sun no longer gives warmth, it scorches. The deck becomes hot to the touch. Water in barrels grows tepid, then sour. Sweat never dries. It simply sits on your skin, clinging like guilt. There is no shade, no breeze, no escape, and yet everything smells of rot. The men grow restless. Cards are played more fiercely. Voices rise. A fight breaks out over nothing. A borrowed knife, a spilled drink. And then silence returns, deeper than before. Every noise feels louder. The slap of bare feet on hot planks. The endless buzz of flies. The scratching of lice under collars. Some begin to talk to the sea as if pleading with it. Some start to pray more often. Others stop altogether. Where you begin to count days not by sunrises but by the water rations. How much is left? Who's been caught sneaking extra? Who's getting sick? You begin to notice the sky too much. The way the clouds refuse to form. The way the stars come out at night and feel farther than usual. Someone jokes about throwing a body overboard to break the curse, but no one laughs. Animals suffer too. If there are still livestock aboard, their bleats grow ragged, their eyes dull. Even the rats move slower, as if the ship itself were draining the life from all aboard. You watch a cockroach crawl across your boot. You don't bother to kick it off. What's the point? The ship's log continues to be written, though it becomes more of a journal than a record. Another day, no wind, spirits low. Even the captain's voice is softer. His hat wilts, his coat remains folded in his quarters. No one asks him for guidance anymore. He has none to give. And then one night a sudden sound, a flap, faint but real. You run to the deck. The sails are stirring, and barely, just enough to twitch. And then, like the first breath after drowning, a breeze. Just a whisper, but the men rise like sleepers waking. They rush to the lines, eyes wide, hands trembling. And when the ship finally moves even an inch in, a cheer rises from dry throats. You'd think land had been spotted. But no, it's just the wind returning. The world remembered you again. And you've survived the doldrums this time. Segment 15. Blister, bone, and blood, medical misery at sea. You begin to limp. A simple sore on your foot, rubbed raw from days in wet boots, has opened into something worse. It throbs, it smells faintly of something sweet and wrong. You say nothing at first, because to speak it out loud might earn you a trip to the surgeon's corner. And no one wants that. And the ship's surgeon, if one sails with you at all, is rarely a doctor in the proper sense. More often a barber, a butcher, or someone who once apprenticed in a hospital but was never trusted with real patients. Still, on this deck he is the final authority on the body, and his tools are few. A saw, a needle, a jar of leeches, a bottle of rum. The table he uses is just a barrel with a tarp thrown over it, no clean linens, no anesthesia, just the wind, the salt, and the prayers of the men watching. When a limb must come off, and because of rot, gangrene, or a shattered bone from falling rigging, it is done fast. They strap you down, they make you bite leather. You drink until you can't speak, and then he begins, sawing, not delicately, but like a man cutting rope. You scream, everyone does. If you don't, the men say you're already dead. Wounds aren't just painful, and they're dangerous. Salt gets in everything. There are no sterile bandages. A simple cut from a splinter can turn into infection that swells and reddens, then spreads. They call it the creeping death. When red streaks crawl up your leg or arm, the surgeon will reach for his knife. He might open the skin to drain it, or he might say it's too late. And then there's scurvy. At first you don't notice it. Maybe your gums bleed when you brush with a twig. Maybe your joints ache more than usual. But then your teeth begin to loosen. Your legs swell. You bruise just from leaning against a rail. You are falling apart from the inside out because you haven't seen a lemon in 3 months. The surgeon can't help you. He'll boil some herbs, maybe. But without fresh fruit, your fate is sealed. Some men develop sailor's boils, angry lumps under the skin that burst and leak. Others get lice so bad that their scalp bleeds. Some begin to go blind or mad. The sun does its part too. Snow blindness from staring at reflective waves, sunstroke from hours on the deck, and burns. Not from fire, but from just lying too long under a cloudless sky. Hell, when it's all too much, when the pain is greater than the surgeon's skill or the rot goes too deep. You are left in your hammock, quarantined from the others, and offered whatever comfort can be found. Sometimes that means rum, sometimes just a song. More often it means nothing at all. The dead are sewn into canvas with a cannonball at their feet and slid into the sea. One stitch through the nose to be sure they don't wake up again. Because it has happened, or so the old men say. Segment 16, The Rope and the Cat. Justice on the high seas, you step wrong once. A missed bell, a snapped line, a word said too loudly during a watch, and suddenly everyone is watching you. The boatswain squints. The officer's voice cuts the air like a blade, and you're marched forward to stand before the mast. You don't know yet how bad it will be, but the crew has stopped chewing. The cook leans on his ladle. Even the rats go still. And the Articles of Agreement, the ship's laws, are posted in the captain's cabin. But most men can't read them. Instead, you learn the rules the hard way by example. Laziness, theft, disobedience, drunkenness, blasphemy. All of these have consequences, and some of them are final. Minor infractions might earn you extra watch, double rations of bilge water, or a day cleaning the heads, the ship's foulest corner. But for more serious offenses, there is the cat o' nine tails, a brutal whip with 9 knotted cords designed not just to punish but to leave a mark, physical and psychological. You're tied to the mast or the grating, shirt removed, back exposed. A hush falls. The bosun's mate steps forward. He's done this before. He raises the cat, lets it dangle for a breath, and then brings it down. Crack. It's not the loudness that surprises you, it's the heat. The way it blooms across your back like fire under the skin. Not sharp, but deep. You lose count after 3. Some men scream. Others go quiet, completely. The deck is washed after. Not out of cleanliness, but because of blood. Some sailors hide their scars. Others wear them with pride. But the message is clear. The ship must stay in order. And order must be enforced. Because without it, this floating world collapses. There are worse punishments, too. Keel hauling. Dragging a man beneath the ship from one side to the other. The barnacles below the waterline are like broken glass. Few survive without permanent injury. Some don't survive at all. Marooning, leaving a man on a barren shore with no food or water. It's not execution, but it's not mercy either. Then there's flogging round the fleet, where a sailor is whipped on every ship in the line. It's a punishment reserved for the gravest crimes. Mutiny, murder, or insulting the captain in front of the crew. And yet, there are moments when the law bends. A favored man is spared. A cruel officer pushes too far. Sometimes in the dark, justice is taken back in quiet revenge. A shove near the rail, a rope cut an hour too soon. But officially, discipline is sacred, because on a ship there is no backup. No police, no courts, only the rules and the men who enforce them. Segment 17. Nail in the mast, coin under the keel, superstition and sea lore. You might laugh at first. A grown man refusing to whistle on deck, another tapping the mast twice before climbing the rigging, a third muttering apologies before casting off a tangled rope. But out here, where the horizon is empty and death rides on a change in wind, men cling to ritual like a second sail. You are taught quickly what not to do. Never whistle. They say it calls the wind. Sometimes too much of it. Never sail on a Friday. It's unlucky. That's the day Christ was crucified, they say. Never cut your nails or hair at sea. It's bad luck to shed any part of yourself to the waves. But it goes deeper. Coins are often hammered beneath the mainmast. Why? To pay the ferryman should the ship sink, so your soul has coin to cross the water. And always a nail must be driven into the mast before the first voyage. Iron wards off spirits, they say. It makes the ship listen. Some men refuse to speak the name of a drowned sailor. Others won't sail with a woman aboard, unless she's carved in wood as a figurehead, bare-chested, eyes forward, guiding the way. A woman in the flesh? They say she stirs up the sea's jealousy. But a carved one, silent and beautiful, might keep the waves calm. When an albatross follows the ship, the men grow quiet. It is a soul reborn watching, a sign of protection. Kill it, and the sea will turn on you. So goes the legend, and more than one storm has confirmed it. And before a long journey, some sailors will slip a piece of garlic into the gunwale, or a scrap of their mother's apron beneath their shirt. Some carry bits of shipwrecked wood, believing they cannot drown while it's on their person. They sew these charms into the lining of their clothes. No one speaks of it, but everyone knows. Then there are the birds. A sudden flock circling above, good luck. A single bird landing on deck, bad. A dead calm at sunrise. Best to throw a pinch of salt over your left shoulder. And if the bell tolls on its own even once, all eyes turn to the sky. There you learn the omens of wind, the whispers of rats. Even the shape of waves becomes a kind of language. There is no science in it, only memory and fear. But after enough voyages, you stop questioning. You start doing the same. Because in a place where men drown silently, where storms appear without warning, and where the moon casts shadows that move on their own, sometimes a coin under the mast feels like your best defense. Segment 18, 1,000 Hours to Nowhere, Boredom and Madness at Sea. There's no wind today. Just the sound of rigging shifting softly in the breeze and the groan of the ship's timbers expanding in the heat. No shouting, no waves, only time. Slow, dragging like molasses poured over a warped deck. You've swabbed the same plank 3 times, not because it's dirty, but because it gives your hand something to do. There are no clocks on board, only bells. 2 bells for the middle of a watch. 8 bells for the end. A rhythm of life measured by sound, not by progress. And the horizon hasn't changed in 3 weeks. Boredom at sea is different from boredom ashore. It isn't passive, it gnaws at you. It wraps around your mind like a fog. With no books to read, no letters from home, no windows or scenery or change of season, you begin to lose track of where you are, and even who you were before. Every day smells of salt, tar, sweat, and stale wood. The meals never change. Salt beef, hardtack, maybe peas if they haven't sprouted worms, maybe beer if the casks haven't turned to vinegar. You chew slowly, not because it helps, but because it fills another minute. The men talk. That's what they do, in low voices at night over buckets of seawater, or while picking lice from each other's shirts. They talk of ports they've never seen, lovers they barely remember, fights they likely didn't win. The stories grow bolder with every telling. You listen because it's better than silence. You nod even when you know it's a lie. It's not about truth. It's about noise, a small bulwark against the emptiness. And still the days stretch on. Games are invented, dice made from rat bones, cards drawn on old parchment. You bet with buttons, bits of cord, rusty nails. Some men carve, a scrimshaw mostly. Using whalebone or leftover wood, they scratch out images. Mermaids, names, crosses, devils, dreams. One man spends 3 weeks carving the face of a woman he says he met in Lisbon. Another carves an hourglass with wings. He never explains it. No one asks. Eventually, even these pastimes fade. The dice get lost, the carvings pile up unadmired. You feel it starting. That sensation of being adrift inside yourself. You wake in the middle of the night, unsure what day it is. You forget the names of your crewmates. Your dreams are always the same. Water, water, water. And some men laugh too hard at nothing. Some sit with their backs to the mast and blink slowly, like they're listening to something that isn't there. One man begins to peel the skin from his fingertips, not in pain but as a distraction. Another tries to catch shadows, claims they move wrong at midday. You watch them closely, because you wonder when it will be your turn. The officers don't talk about it. They call it cabin fever or just sea-weary, but they know. They've seen men go dull behind the eyes, seen a cheerful lad turn silent for weeks only to throw himself into the sea without a word. No one jumps to save them, because if they've made the choice, you don't interrupt it. And the body is heavy with clothes. It doesn't take long to sink. Some try to fight the creeping madness with rituals. A shave every third day, even when there's no mirror. A daily prayer, even when no one else joins. Staring at the stars and counting the same constellations just to remember, you're part of a world that's bigger than the ship. But for many, it isn't enough. The ship becomes the entire world. The deck, your street, the mast, your chapel. The hold, your grave. Not yet filled, but always waiting. And when it rains, the laughter returns. Sailors dance like children, shirts off, skin slick, catching drops on their tongues. The scent of rain on wood feels like a miracle. The change in air, the movement of clouds, it's a kind of salvation. But the rain passes, the clouds thin, and the sun returns, hot, flat, eternal. There is no arrival, only the next day, the next watch, the next bowl of soup, until the captain shouts, "Land ho," or he doesn't. Either way, you keep waiting, because the only thing worse than endless boredom is remembering that it might not end at all. Segment 19. Land ho, and the lies we tell ourselves about shore. Leave one day near dawn. The cry goes up, "Land ho." At first you don't believe it. You blink into the pale light, eyes sore, neck stiff from sleeping wedged beside a coil of rope. But there it is, a smear of green and brown on the edge of the world, breaking the endless line of sea and sky. For a moment the ship feels lighter. Someone starts humming a shanty not heard in months. You can smell it on them. Hope. But hope is fragile out here. And the talk begins almost immediately. What kind of port it is, how many taverns, whether the locals are friendly, or armed, or both. Rumors build before the anchor drops. Some swear there will be fresh bread and grilled fish. Others speak of coin to be made unloading cargo, of women waiting at the docks, of feathers in hair and brass in their ears. None of it matters. You're not dreaming about riches. You're dreaming about walking on ground that doesn't move. Landfall always comes slower than you expect. The sails are lowered, the longboats are lowered. And finally, you're rowed ashore. Stiff-legged, squinting into the unfamiliar light, half convinced the world might collapse beneath your feet. The earth feels wrong, solid but dizzying. The ground tilts beneath your boots like it's mocking your sea legs. You find yourself standing still, hands on hips, waiting for the world to sway. But it doesn't. And that somehow is worse. From the first breath you take is full of soil and wood smoke and sweat and citrus. It stings your nose, a reminder that the sea has dulled your senses more than you realized. And then the town appears, not a shining port of golden music, but a string of lean-tos and salt-stained walls, sun-bleached paint, dogs fighting in the gutters, and children peering from doorways like you're some new breed of ghost. There are taverns, but they're dark and loud, and the ale tastes like dishwater. The music is too fast, the beds are too soft, everything feels wrong. And the men break off quickly. Some make for the nearest brothel, fumbling with their belts before they even knock. Some go in search of bread, fruit, wine, things with flavor, texture, life. Some go looking for a fight just to feel something again. And some wander aimlessly, staring at trees or hills or clouds like their forgotten family. You eat too much, too fast. Your stomach, long starved of anything fresh, revolts. You drink too much. It hits you harder than it should, and you find yourself asleep on a warm stone wall. The sound of insects buzzing like a lullaby. By nightfall, the town feels smaller, less magical, less full of promise. The women have disappeared. The drinks cost more, someone's gone missing. A fight breaks out. You hear a familiar sound, the voice of your boatswain calling the men back. Shore leave is over. It always ends sooner than you think. You walk back to the longboat under a sky full of unfamiliar stars. The land is already forgetting you. And the ship, anchored in the dark water beyond the reef, waits like a silent god, cold, massive, and patient. You look back at the beach trying to decide if it was worth it. But you can't quite remember the food, the beer, the woman's face, or even the taste of earth under your boots. All you remember now is the rocking motion, and the way your stomach somehow misses it. Segment 20. The ship is sick room. Fevers, filth, and the death you couldn't outrun. There is no wind this morning. Just still air, hot and close, and a smell rising from below decks. Something sweet, wrong, and heavy. A sailor is missing from muster, then two. By evening, the whisper moves like fire among the hammocks. Fever. No one says more, they don't have to. You've seen it before, you've seen the sick laid out in lines, too weak to lift their heads. You've heard the way a man breathes when his lungs begin to drown him. You've seen eyes glazed, lips cracked, hands twitching with fever dreams. There is nothing romantic here. Only the slow unraveling of bodies in the dark. The illness aboard ship is worse than ashore. You're trapped. No room to isolate, no way to escape. The same water is touched by every hand. The same food is ladled into every bowl. The same rats scurry along the same beams chewing through sackcloth, biscuit, and bone. You try not to breathe too deeply. You eat with your back to the sick. But the ship is a sealed world, and when sickness comes, it does not leave. Some diseases arrive suddenly, like the bloody flux, which takes men by the gut and bleeds them dry from within. One day you're working the ropes, the next you're curled around your own pain while your mates avert their eyes. Others come slow, the low, dry cough of consumption, the strange stiffness of the neck, the sores that don't heal. But the worst always is scurvy. Mine, it begins quietly, why with sore gums, then loose teeth, then wounds that won't close. You feel tired, then brittle. Your skin bruises at the touch. Your muscles ache for no reason. Old scars split open, old injuries come back. You bleed from the mouth while you sleep. You weep without cause, they call it the sailor's rot. And it spreads not through contact, but through absence. The absence of citrus, of anything green. Of the one thing your body needs but cannot ask for. Lemons become legends. Limes, a sailor's dream. Some chew bark, some drink seawater, believing the salt will purify them. Some go quietly mad. There are no doctors, only barber surgeons with bone saws and rum. They bleed the sick, they lance boils. They amputate in the open air. A man with a fever might lose an arm, a leg, or both. Sometimes the sickness goes away. Sometimes it doesn't. The lucky ones die in sleep, the others linger. When the death toll rises, the air thickens with dread. The dead are wrapped in their hammocks, weighted with cannonballs, read over briefly, then slid into the sea with a dull splash. No graves, no markers. Just a name whispered and forgotten by morning. Unless it was someone close. Then you remember his laugh, his boots, the way he always tied his sash. You try not to remember how he looked at the end. The worst days are the quiet ones. No sails to furl, no orders barked. Just the creak of the hull. The shuffle of shoes past the sick bay. The smell again rising from the hatch. That soft, sweet rot of men turning back to salt and silence. You think of home. Of fresh bread, of your mother's broth. Of clean bed sheets and green grass and wind that doesn't stink of sweat. You ache for it, not just for comfort, but for dignity. Out here, there is no dignity in dying. Just a line of men watching as your body is lowered into the ocean, and the ship sails on like you were never there at all. Segment 21. Sewn into the sea. The sailor's burial. There is no tolling bell, no marble cross, no procession of mourners dressed in black. Just the creak of the ropes, the flap of canvas, and the low voice of the boatswain reading from a book gone soft with use and salt. A man has died, and now the sea will take him. The ship slows. Not fully. She cannot stop him. But the crew gathers. Some hold hats. Some hold nothing. Some look away. The body is wrapped in canvas, his hammock most often, stitched shut with coarse sail thread. At the final stitch, a needle is pushed through the nose. It is not cruel, it is tradition. Because once long ago a man woke as they slid him over the gunwale. The prick of the needle ensures the dead don't come back screaming. Dying at his feet, a cannonball is tied. To take him down, there is no coffin. No headstone, only the sky above and the deep below. The chaplain, if there is one, speaks in plain words. If not, the boatswain does. Or the captain, or no one. Sometimes it's just a moment of silence and the sound of a body sliding on wet wood. We therefore commit his body to the deep. The words are always the same. From the Book of Common Prayer, read to Protestants and Catholics alike. The sea does not distinguish. It claims all without preference. One moment the shape is there, heavy with soaked cloth marked by the pale outline of a man. The next, gone, swallowed. Silence again. There is no mourning in the way you know it. There is no funeral meal, no black veil, no flowers. But there are memories, spoken low, shared at the edge of sleep. He was the one who carved the pipe from whalebone, the one who could tie knots in the dark, the one who always saved you a bit of extra hard tack when the stores ran low. The crew rarely cries. Salt has dried them, they say little. But the loss lingers. You feel it in the way men sit closer together that night, in the way a shirt goes unworn, a bunk left empty, until it isn't. Superstition clings to the sea. Some say the soul drifts just below the hull for 3 days before it finds its way down. Some whisper that the albatross is the spirit of a drowned sailor, watching his old ship from above. Others just drink more heavily that night, looking over the side longer than usual. No one ever says that could be me. But they think it, you think it. Every time. When more die, the ritual becomes shorter. Haste replaces reverence. You sow faster, read quicker. Bury 3-4 at once. At worst, the dead are stacked in tarpaulin and committed all together. No name, no bell, just bodies returned to a sea that was always waiting. But even in this there is strange peace. Because the sea gives no stone to visit, no grave to tend, just memory. A sailor knows. No matter how far the ship sails, the dead remain close. All around, underneath. You sail atop your own kind. The ocean, after all, has become the world's largest cemetery. Segment 22. Heave away, haul together. The songs that kept you moving. It starts with a grunt, a rhythmic huff, rising from the deck as 4 men lean into a line. Then a voice rough, tired, but loud. Way, hey, blow the man down when the work begins. The line tightens, the sail lifts. The song carries, not for pleasure, but for timing. Sea shanties weren't music for the ears, they were a metronome for the hands. One on land, you sing to pass time. On a ship, you sing to survive it. Raising a yard without rhythm breaks backs. Hauling a line without cadence leaves slack. But with a chanty, you become one body, one breath, one pull. Heave away, boys, haul away. Each line is matched to emotion. Heave, pause. Haul, step. The sea doesn't wait, neither does the wind. But when you sing, you move as one, and the ship obeys. There are different songs for different jobs. Capstan shanties for weighing anchor, halyard shanties for hoisting sails, short drag shanties for sudden brutal pulls. You learn them without thinking. The tunes don't matter, it's the beat. The beat is everything, and when it's over, you don't applaud. You spit, wipe your brow, and get back to work. Not every shanty is loud. Some are low, almost muttered, sung at night under the lantern's dull glow. When mending rope or stitching sails, they hum through the planks like ghosts, half lullaby, half lament. You hear one in your sleep. The deep voice of an old deckhand singing about home. A cottage on a hill, a dog that never barked at him, a girl who wore yellow. You don't know the words, but you hum along, because it reminds you once lived on land, too. Not everyone sings. Some keep quiet, superstitious, tense. Others belt out the filthiest verses you've ever heard. Songs of women with a dozen legs, of captains who fell overboard with their trousers down. You laugh because sometimes laughter is the only thing keeping you from crying. And then there's the fiddler, if you're lucky enough to have one. He plays in the rare moments of rest, and on Sundays maybe. When the sun is soft and no sails need tending, the crew stomps, claps, dances like fools on a pitching deck. The ship rocks, but the music holds you upright. Even the officers smile, even the cook hums along. For those few minutes, you aren't in the middle of nowhere. You're together, and not just as shipmates, as people. The music doesn't last long. It can't, a storm is always coming. A rope always needs hauling, but something remains. A tune stuck in your teeth, a rhythm in your heel, a beat in your chest that reminds you the crew is still breathing. And in the darkest nights, when you can't sleep, when the ship groans like it might split apart, when you hear it, soft from the deck above, or the bunk below, a single voice, tired but steady. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. And you close your eyes. Not because the work is done, but because for now someone else is singing, and that's enough. Segment 23, Bad Luck in the Rigging. The strange superstitions of the sea. You learn the rules early. Not the ones printed in logbooks, but the older ones, passed from mouth to ear, bunk to bunk, in whispers and sideways glances. Because at sea, it isn't enough to tie your knots right, to know the winds, to fear the storms. You must also know what angers the sea. You learn that bananas are bad luck. No one agrees why. Some say they spoil quickly. Some say they carry venomous spiders. Others say they rot the minds of the men who sleep too close to them. Whatever the reason, if you show up with bananas in your sea chest, they go overboard. Or you do. You never whistle on deck. It's said to summon the wind, but not the gentle kind, the shrieking, shipbreaking kind, so you hum instead. Even if you're desperate for breeze, you keep your lips shut. Because whistling might bring more than you can handle. Oh, you never name a pig. You never cut your hair at sea. You never say drowned aloud. It's always he went over or he's gone under. Words are powerful out here. They change the wind, they wake something old. Even the most hardened sailor mutters under his breath when someone speaks carelessly. Women aboard ships are a strange matter. A woman in trousers might be bad luck. A woman in red, worse. But a figurehead carved in a woman's shape, bare-breasted, eyes forward. She's good. She watches the way ahead. She calms the waves. Paint her lips wrong, though. Too red, too thin, and the sea might take offense. The sea notices things. Our albatrosses must never be harmed. They carry the souls of dead sailors. Kill one and a curse will follow. You've seen it happen. A man foolish and drunk slings a stone. The bird falls and then silence. That night the wind dies. By morning the ship drifts. By dusk the water turns sour in the barrels. Coincidence? No one believes in coincidence at sea. There are other signs. A shark following the ship for days, a death is coming. A glass dropped and shattered on the gun deck, ill fortune. Red skies at morning. A sudden coldness below decks. A lantern blown out with no wind. All taken seriously, all remembered. You might laugh about it later. On land, over ale. But out there, you tap the mast for luck. You toss salt over your shoulder. You keep a small charm in your pocket. A coin, a tooth, a carving from your brother. Superstition fills the gaps that science can't. It keeps fear in its cage. Because the sea doesn't care how skilled you are. It doesn't care how long you've served. It doesn't care if you're kind or cruel. So you cling to ritual, to pattern, to silence. You fold your shirt the same way. You touch the figurehead before each voyage. You never sail on a Friday. Because maybe, just maybe, one small action will keep the mast standing. One old chant will keep the water out. And if it doesn't, at least you've followed the rules. The first sign isn't shouting, it's silence. An unnatural quiet, like the ship herself is holding her breath. You notice it in small things. The way a joke lands with no laughter. How men begin to gather in pairs, then break apart quickly when you pass. The ship creaks as always. The sails snap and sigh. But beneath the surface of routine, something tightens. It's not sudden. It never is. Mutiny is a slow boil and not a thunderclap. You see it brewing during the long weeks without land, when rations shrink by the day and the captain still eats first. His boots remain dry, his collar stays starched. His words come clipped and sharp, but his eyes no longer look anyone in the face. He speaks of discipline, but it's fear that leaks from his voice. The men sleep in shifts, wedged like kindling in the hold. They cough in the dark, wake with limbs numb and bellies empty. The biscuits crawl with weevils. The water smells like copper pipe. Your hands are cracked from salt and rope. Your mind, always turning, begins to whisper. Why should he lead? Why should we follow? The resentment isn't loud, it's subtle. You hear it in the scrape of tin plates. You see it in how slowly the halyards are hauled. You feel it in the way shoulders brush in the narrow passageways, harder than they used to. One night, beneath the lantern's faint swing, a voice says, "What if we took the ship?" It's not a command. It's not a plan, it's just a suggestion. Barely more than breath. But no one dismisses it. No one laughs. You try to sleep, but you know it's coming. You feel it like an approaching squall, and then, on a night without stars, it happens. The captain is woken by the sound of boots. Too many, too fast. He sits up, but the door is already open. Lanterns spill yellow across the floor. Voices bark, hands grab, his pistol is gone. So is his sword. And the fear he once inspired evaporates in the heat of real fury. He's pulled from his quarters, shirt torn, feet bare. The crew doesn't yell, they don't need to. Their faces are calm, determined. He's not captain now, he's just the man who failed them. Why what follows is rarely glorious. No triumphant music, no new dawn, just decisions, heavy ones. Some crews lock their captain in the brig. Some give him a boat, a cask of water, a bag of biscuit, a compass, and set him adrift with a prayer. Others don't bother with ceremony. They toss him over the side, the splash muffled by the wind. And then what? A new man takes the helm. He doesn't speak much, he knows his position is fragile. He was a friend yesterday, and now he gives orders. You obey, because what else can you do? You sail on, quieter than before, eyes always watching. The storm has passed, yeah, but another may be forming. History remembers the famous ones. The Bounty, where Fletcher Christian turned against Bligh. The Batavia, where mutiny bled into massacre. The HMS Hermione, where officers were slaughtered in their hammocks. But most mutinies aren't remembered. Most are swallowed by the sea, covered up in reports, forgotten in letters home, because to admit what happened is to invite punishment. In ports across the world, mutineers were hanged, lashed, branded with hot irons. A rope was always waiting for the man who defied the chain of command. Even if you survive the mutiny, you don't come out clean. Something changes. You speak less, sleep less, trust less. Because if you could rise up once, someone else might do it again. And you wonder, when the next squall comes, when the sails split and the hull screams, will the ship survive without its captain? Will you? Segment 25. Land Underfoot. The strange return of the sailor. The ship has docked. The ropes are cast. The sails are furled, tied with careful hands. And the tide for once does not matter. You've made it. You survived. But it doesn't feel like relief. You step onto the dock and the ground moves. Not because it actually does, but because your legs have learned the sea's rhythm. You sway slightly, your stomach tightens. The land feels foreign. You've spent so long bending to the ship's will that you've forgotten what stillness really is. The smells are overwhelming. Baked bread, fresh soil, wood smoke, and something fainter, something sweet you can't name. For months your world was salt and tar, old canvas and sour meat. Now it's too much. You squint against the color. Everything is too bright, too loud, too fast. The townspeople glance at you as you pass. They can tell. You wear the sea in your posture, in your rough hands, in the way your eyes flick toward the horizon even here, miles from the tide. You try to smile, but it feels stiff. You try to sit still, but your boots itch to pace. You're used to movement, to orders, to the creak of wood and the whistle of wind. Now there is only silence. And questions. You find your way to an inn. Or maybe you return to a house you haven't seen in 2 years. The door still opens the same way. The floorboards still groan under your weight, but the walls feel closer now. The ceiling lower, the bed too soft. You sleep poorly, the air is too dry. You miss the pitch and sway. You dream of masts, of gulls, of ropes in your hands. You wake to birdsong, then it sounds wrong. If you're lucky, there are letters waiting. Family. Maybe a child born while you were away. A mother's handwriting. A promise of stew when you visit. But often there is nothing. Too much time has passed. You've missed weddings, funerals, harvests, wars. The world kept spinning without you, and you, weathered and burnt by the journey, returned to find yourself a stranger in your own town. The money doesn't last long. Wages are cut for damages or lost cargo, or you were cheated at the docks. Your coin vanished before you even reached the tavern. You spend the days walking or drinking or both. You find other sailors, men who understand what it means to work the decks until your fingers bleed. To feel joy at dry biscuits, to hear the call of the watch at 4 a.m. as a kind of comfort. You sit together, you don't say much. You don't have to. Eventually you start to wonder, will you go back to the sea? To the same winds and waves and endless gray? The answer is almost always yes. Not because you love it, but because the land no longer fits. Out there you had a purpose, a rhythm, a kind of clarity. You knew where to stand. What to do, here, you drift. And the sea, cruel as it is, always welcomes you back. Look, so you sign again, take the advance. Pack your oilskin and knife. Kiss whoever still waits for you, and if anyone does. And return to the only place that still feels like home. A place where sleep is rare, but meaning is clear. Where pain is constant, but so is motion. You step aboard, feel the sway. Smell the salt, and you breathe. Not easier, but deeper. Because this, for better or worse, is who you are. A sailor adrift always. Even when the land is underfoot.